Good afternoon, everyone. I'm one of the old guys and one of the guys that's been around the longest with this organization. So I get a commission for every membership that I sell. While I make my comments, and so please give generously, okay? As about the only way you can make money, and there might not even be a tariff on it. So we'll be, you know, I I always get asked why AEG and why, when we started this thing back in 2007, it was basically to pick a premier of all things. We went with one guy, and that horse ended up not working out, so we went with the next, through our support behind the next one, which was Ed Stelmach, and of course that one materialized to be productive. So that's the way we started out. And when the election was over, we were a group of business folks led by Cal Nichols at the time. Tim Shipton, I don't think Tim is here. And Ontario Flynn and so on, we got together and said, hey, we got a good thing going here. Let's develop a new name, named it Alberta Enterprise Group. And since then, we've been trying to advocate, trying to connect government and business and do things literally around the world. I guess at the end of the day, it's been a great ride for me. I think that one thing that seems to be going away a bit is networking and mentorship and just boosting your self-confidence, talking to colleagues that are in the same boat as you. You've heard the saying, it's very lonely at the top. When you have an issue within your own business, it's always nice to talk to a colleague that might have had the same problem, that does have the same problems. And it always feels good to talk things through, either at the boardroom table or a glass of wine, maybe once in a while as well, helps lubricate the mind. But at the end of the day, I've had a tremendous amount of fun, and I've gained a lot of experience from being on the board, being part of Alberta Enterprise Group. And the difference really I find between AEG and some of the other organizations is we're a smaller group, very nimble. We can make a fairly quick decision on what we might want to attack and what we might want to leave alone, because from a sheer size perspective, we don't have the resources, and so on and so forth. And those decisions are made by a bunch of very intelligent people around the boardroom table. And of course, that's from feedback that we get from the members. So overall, I just love this group. I don't like wasting my time. At my age, you don't have a lot of time to waste, so you want to make sure you're productive with whatever you do have available to you. So I don't know. I know a little bit of history. I think that one of the things that we're the most proud of, and I've always wondered why we've always been successful in doing this, is trade missions. The one thing, if you do become a member, we have in the past, and then of course we had COVID, so let's not even talk about that, but we've had some very, very successful trade missions. We've gone Washington, Ottawa, Geneva, Nevada, probably missing a couple as well, and the response is always very positive on those trade missions, not only from the people that actually go on the mission, but interestingly enough, we have incredible success in getting good speakers, whether it's the governor of Nevada, the prime minister of Canada, like that was Stephen Harper. We've had some pretty big attention. When I was chair, I had security with me in Montreal because I went down and promoted the oil sands, and then I wasn't let out of the hotel while I was there, and so on, because of the demonstration that was put together. So overall, it's been that's part of the excitement too, right? To see a bunch of media around, and I had this finance minister of Quebec explain to us how they're going to have a balanced budget in this time frame. And I asked them the question, or better yet, I asked one of my people to ask the question. Since I was chair, I didn't feel I should do that, as to, okay, you say you're going to have a balanced budget, but you got $8 billion in there for transfer funds. Like, I don't consider that to be a balanced budget. Anyways, it goes on and on. Hey, listen, I'll tell you what, there's a some people at the door sign up, and like I said, I get 10% of the fees. So, and you don't want to listen to me anymore because Minister Horner just gave us a briefing. Again, if you become a member, you could have been in there and found out all the sticky material. But in any case, he's got some very interesting comments to make to you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Bruno. And now I also want to officially thank our sponsors, our platinum sponsor being Genics, Maple Leaf Strategies, ValueMed Professional Products. Diamond is Caron Trucking with Bruno. Gold is Specialized Recruiting Group. And silver is Andersen. Now we would like to welcome Minister Horner to, who's our introducer? I don't have those notes. Kelly, thank you so much, Kelly. Kelly is going to introduce Maple Leaf Strategies to Minister Horner. Thank you, Kelly.
Don't share this with Bruno, but I know that security was as much protecting those rioters from Bruno's wrath as it was the other way around. So, Minister, wonderful to see you here again. Thank you so much for making time for us. Like Bruno, I'm a fan of the Alberta Enterprise Group because of the work it does and the pace that Catherine sets for us and our ability to influence. But I also have been in this room for a number of meetings with elected officials, but also with senior public servants. And I just, Minister, want to express to you and through you to the rest of your government how much we appreciate the support we get from the government of Alberta and what we're trying to do as well. So thank you for being here. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction because, of course, you're not here to hear me, but it is my second year of having the opportunity to introduce the minister, and it is his second budget and his second time coming to Alberta Enterprise Group to talk with us. So Minister Horner was first elected in 2019 and re-elected in 2023 for the constituency of Drumheller-Stettler, and he became Minister of Finance and Treasury on June 9th of 2023. Minister, we know Alberta is facing some very serious headwinds, and we look forward to hearing more about how we can manage those competing priorities while investing in Albertans. And with that, Minister, I invite you to take the podium. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kelly, and also thank you to Catherine and Kathy and Bruno for all the intros and comments, and it's nice to be with everyone today. So yeah, we'll go over some budget 2025 highlights, I guess you could say. I know this isn't news, but the past year has been one of many ups and downs, and we do continue to face many challenges that impact our budget and our decisions going forward. Budget 2025 reflects those ups and downs and meets the challenges facing Alberta. It meets the challenge of the high cost of living with a tax cut that keeps hundreds of dollars in Albertans' pockets starting in 2025. The budget meets the challenge of a rapidly growing population with the highest ever investments in education and healthcare. And it's meeting the challenge of uncertainties in trade and security by focusing on diplomacy and the economy. Meeting the challenge means being clear-eyed about what's right in front of us and being ready to address it. It means doing the right things to ensure we remain steadfast in the face of headwinds. Let's take a look at our economic situation now and going forward. Our economy was on solid footing at the end of 2024. The province added almost 63,000 jobs in the last quarter of the year. The energy sector was firing on all cylinders. Oil hit a record of 4.3 million barrels per day at the end of the year. Activity in the housing market was surging, while construction in the industrial sector was also ramping up. However, with uncertainty on the rise, Budget 2025 takes a cautious approach. As we've seen lately, the province could be facing tariffs that will significantly impact our province. These measures will dampen Alberta's trajectory for growth. While Alberta's real GDP expanded an estimated 3% last year, we are forecasting it to slow to under 2% this year and next. We expect to do better than other provinces, given the composition of our economy. The energy sector is in a good position to weather the storm, but other sectors could be hit hard by the tariffs, including manufacturing and agriculture. This means that we're expecting the unemployment rate to remain high this year. In fact, it is forecast to average above 7% on an annual basis over the next 2 years, peaking at 7.4% in 2025 before dipping slightly to 7.2% in 2026. But there are some bright spots. The housing market is expected to stand out as home builders continue to play catch up with the rapid increase in demand over the last few years. Despite challenges, investment intentions are strong, and we expect to see progress on major projects in the province, albeit at a slower pace. Our population will continue to grow, and people will continue to spend and support the economy in the province. Revenue is estimated at $74 billion in 25-26. This is a $6.6 billion lower than the 24-25 third quarter forecast of $81 billion. The potential tariffs imposed by the U.S. administration made it very challenging to forecast revenues, and this is reflected in the forecast for oil prices. The West Texas Intermediate oil price is expected to average $68 per barrel in 25-26, which is $6 lower than in 24-25. While the price of oil is expected to increase to $71.50 per barrel by 27-28, I should remind everyone, each $1 drop in the WTI price carves out around $750 million from our bottom line. And similar for some of the other sensitivities, every dollar difference in the differential is about $740 million swing. Every cent change in the currency is about $560 million swing. Those are up substantially from 2024. In 2024, it was about 630 for oil, 600 for the diff, and 490 for the currency. That is largely due to more of the bitumen plays hitting maturity and becoming full royalty payers. Tax revenue is also expected to decrease by about $600 million from the 24-25 third quarter forecast. That's mainly due to the introduction of the new personal income tax bracket that will save Albertans $1.2 billion in 2025, as well as the estimated impact of potential tariffs. This is why we are leaning heavily on our fiscal framework. When we were faced with dramatic reductions to our revenue, the framework allows us to run deficits as long as we return to balance within 3 years of the year-end results. Budget 2025, if passed, will have a deficit of $5.2 billion, dropping to $2.4 billion, then $2 billion the following 2 years. We made the difficult decision to run a deficit so that we can direct and target our spending to the top priorities of Albertans. Total expense in 25-26 is forecast at $79.3 billion, an increase of $4.4 billion or 5.9% from 2024-2025. This does include a $4 billion contingency, double the amount set aside in budget 2024 to cover unexpected in-year expense increases and support communities and Albertans during natural disasters. A little history: since the fiscal rules came in, we started at $1.5 billion. We did totally spend it. Last year at $2 billion, we also exceeded it. The first year was largely due to wildfire and crop insurance indemnities from prolonged drought. Last year, it was a combination of drought, fire. Fire was still substantial, Jasper and the like, over $700 million. But also, due to us under forecasting population growth, we didn't have it at 4.4%. Statutory considerations, physician compensation, income support, welfare, where we had to deal with in year. Statutory considerations that, that's what we look to for our in-year spending first, is what is unavoidable. So the increase of the $4 billion is key to provide government with more flexibility to address unforeseen implications of increased economic uncertainty. Alberta's manufacturing sector is expected to be significantly impacted by U.S. tariffs due to its heavy reliance on exports to markets south of the border. The impact, however, will be buffered by a weaker Canadian dollar as we adapt through exporting with other trading partners. In 2024, Alberta exported approximately $32 billion worth of manufacturing goods to the U.S., comprising nearly 3/4 of our total international manufacturing exports. Key products include chemicals, value-added food, notably beef and canola products, as well as petrochemical and coal manufacturing. With trade volatility at the forefront, manufacturing exports are forecast to decline this year. Over the medium term, however, exports are expected to gradually recover as companies find alternative markets and supply chains adjust. The primary agriculture sector will also face challenges from U.S. tariffs, but the impacts will be uneven. Export volumes for crops are expected to take a hit, although a greater diversity for export markets could provide some cushion for major commodities such as wheat. In contrast, livestock exports, particularly cattle, may see sharper price declines due to limited short-term supply adjustments and a lack of alternative markets. Strong cattle prices and robust U.S. demand may cushion the impact, but prolonged U.S. tariffs could shrink Alberta's livestock sector. Business investment in the province will face headwinds from rising input costs, heightened uncertainty, and weaker export demand in the U.S. Nominal investment in industries outside oil and gas extraction is forecast to grow about 4% in 2025, following declines over the last 2 years. But real inflation-adjusted investment is forecast to stay roughly flat this year. Investment will continue to be supported by existing major projects that are driving activity in industrial building construction. Dow's $11.6 billion Path to Zero project is set to ramp up construction this year. Additionally, Air Products' new hydrogen facility and Imperial Oil's Strathcona refinery renewable diesel expansion projects are well underway, and both are slated to come online in 2025. Some projects that received final investment decisions last year have also begun construction, including Wolf Midstream's NGL North System Phase 2, Shell Canada's Polaris Carbon Capture Project at its Scotford Refinery and Chemicals Complex, and the Atlas Carbon Storage Hub. The housing market is forecasted to stay resilient, and residual construction activity will be a bright spot this year. Supply will continue to catch up with the rapid increase in population over the last few years. Alberta's housing starts surged to an annual pace of almost 48,000 units in 2024, exceeding all other provinces on a per capita basis amid declines in starts. Home building activity will stay robust, averaging around 43,000 units in 2025. Residential building permits are hovering around an 8-year high, an indication that home builders continue to be optimistic about activity in the short term against a backdrop of solid population growth and falling borrowing costs. Momentum in Alberta's labor market is slowing following last year's exceptionally strong gains. However, fewer job vacancies, heightened uncertainty, and weaker business activity are anticipated to hold back hiring among businesses this year. Service sector employment will benefit from a growing population and easing interest rates. Next year, employment growth is forecast to decline to 1.6%, its slowest pace post-COVID, before rising to around 2% over the medium term, supported by a pickup in business investment and recovery in per capita consumer spending. However, with job gains lagging behind the increase in the working age population and labor force, the unemployment rate will stay elevated in the near term. It is forecast to peak at 7.4% in 2025 before dipping slightly to 7.2% in 2026. So you can see the delta there that's going to be a problem. The unemployment rate remains high and employment growth is going to decrease. Economic pressures in an aging population will keep the labor force participation rate muted at around 69% in 25 and 26. The unemployment rate is forecast to gradually subside in the outer years as business investment gains traction and economic activity picks up. There are many new capital projects announced in Budget 2025, including planning and upgrades to infrastructure across the province. Our capital plan is projected to support an average of 26,500 jobs annually through 27-28. Very happy to announce that our government is partnering with the City of Edmonton and Oilers Entertainment Group, Sports and Entertainment to rejuvenate downtown Edmonton. The new capital partnership aims to develop a vibrant event park connected to Rogers Place, unlock more housing in the downtown core, support the village at Ice District, and demolish the old Coliseum at Exhibition Lands. We're also investing $2.9 billion for Calgary and Edmonton LRT projects, and $84 million to continue the Terwilliger Drive expansion. These projects will boost our economy, create jobs, and enhance the quality of life for Edmontonians. Together, we're building a brighter future for our capital city. Budget 2025 also ensures that our roads and critical infrastructure meet the demands of a growing population and our vibrant industries. Some key projects include $11 million to advance the new Stollery Children's Hospital, $51 million for the U of A Hospital Brain Center Neurosciences Intensive Care Unit, $208 million in funding for Highway 11 twinning from Red Deer West to Rocky Mountain House, $101 million for Highway 63 twinning north of Fort McMurray, detailed design work for safety improvements on Highway 28. This highway is a critical transportation route serving the Cold Lake oil sands deposits and the Cold Lake 4th Wing Air Base. First stage of realignment and connection of Highways 2 and 3 near Fort Macleod to support the expansion of trade corridors in the region. These projects will ensure Alberta remains a leader across many key sectors. It's no secret that when it comes to productivity, Alberta is the fastest skater on a slow team. I love that line. I try to get that in every speech. Most importantly, Budget 2025 ensures that we retain our competitive advantage, even in the face of pressures that seem to change on an hourly basis. Budget 2025's significant drop in revenue shows we cannot rely on non-renewable resource revenue indefinitely. That's why in January, the government released our plan to grow the Heritage Savings Trust Fund to $250 billion by 2050. We have transitioned away from using earnings from the Heritage Fund to supplement the budget. Instead, annual investment earnings will be left in the fund to grow. And a new Heritage Fund Opportunities Corporation will unlock access to new opportunities. Future generations will be less reliant on non-renewable resource revenue and will be able to count on a more stable revenue source to support their priorities. This is just one other way the government is meeting the challenge. So in conclusion, Alberta's government is making responsible, though difficult decisions. We're meeting challenges by being realistic about risks we're facing that will impact our economy, and we must do the right things to ensure we remain steadfast in the face of oncoming headwinds. No matter what happens, we must be prepared. By keeping spending under control and directing every dollar to where it matters most, the province will maintain Alberta's position as the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Budget 2025 is meeting the challenge of the cost of living by helping families keep more money in their pockets with lower personal income taxes. Budget 2025 is meeting the challenge of uncertainties in trade and security by focusing on diplomacy and the economy. And Budget 2025 is meeting the challenge faced by Alberta with continued investments in education and healthcare. So that was a lot of billion this, billion that, but I hope you're all still awake, and probably you'll get more benefit from the chat, but I look forward to your questions. Sure.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much, Minister. Those graphs were very helpful for me. But I want to just jump into these questions from some of our members here. So recently, Alberta introduced a beer tax on producers that produce 180,000 hectoliters of product, which affect Canadian breweries like Minas, Big Rock, and Great Western Brewery. At a time when we are trying to support local businesses, the Alberta government has quietly introduced a tax on small beer makers, when we should be doing the opposite and supporting Canadian suppliers. A case of beer quietly went up $4 due to Alberta taxes over this past weekend. So why are taxes being increased on Canadian products while larger companies like Labatt and Molson face no increase? Let's support Canadian small businesses instead of increasing taxes. The United States is already doing a great job in taxing us. We don't need to follow in their lead and tax ourselves more.
No, great question. So this policy lives with Minister Nally and Red Tape and Service Alberta, and it's something that is looked at continuously. So it is open to be adjusted every 5 years, and it's something that I know is definitely lobbied heavily. So you have a circumstance where you have players at different levels of output, and you're constantly trying to make that fair. You know, the 180,000 hectoliters, the small brewers, most of the small brewers live well below that. And then you try to make sure there's fairness as you go up the scales until you're at a full tax position. Someone like Labatt, they employ, I think, over 300 Albertans. So there's also considerations there, but it's about, seeking fairness within Alberta's composition. And it's something that's looked at and adjusted on a 5-year basis.
Okay, so we may in 5 years get another beer increase on my case of beer. We don't know. We don't know yet.
Well, I guess it depends on which case of beer, but I can assure you we're trying to keep taxes low. But I would also say, if you're going to be a low tax jurisdiction, and I'll just say this broadly, which I think Albertans want to be, and I just lowered the personal income tax as Premier Smith campaigned on. So we're proud to do that. But we do have to ensure that we're, paying for things. It's all of these things I hear, best public services, lowest taxes, no deficits. Some of these things are in conflict with each other. So, we're just trying to achieve balance as we look at all of these nuanced things. And liquor is different in every province. Premier Kenny, this is very, very appropriate to talk about at this time. We're hearing a lot of the right things across the country right now because of the tariffs. We're talking about markets, egress, opportunity. That's great. Those are things we've been preaching into the void, it seems like, for a long time. When it comes to interprovincial trade barriers, Premier Kenny tried to show leadership and just get rid of everything he could. He really got rid of all of the exceptions except really around liquor, because it was such a challenge, the different markets and systems in different provinces. So liquor will always be a challenge, but we're going to try to ensure there's fairness for brewers and distillers of different sizes.
Yeah, and I think that's where this member is really questioning, is these big international companies, Labatt's and Molson, are getting some advantage in that. So hopefully down the road we can see some change and support Alberta.
Well, I think the advantage, I don't know if I'd agree with that. The advantage that any small brewer receives is that they're not paying the full rate, right? So I think you can look at that different ways. We're trying to provide more of an advantage for these smallest brewers, but we still want, large scale, broad advantages for everyone. We want Labatt to be here creating beer as well. So,
okay. So I'd like to get into the Alberta debt management. So we recognize that you're doing a great job navigating a system that often feels broken. Despite the challenges, Alberta continues to lead in innovation from energy to agri-tech and beyond. What successes from this budget are you most proud of, and how do you see Alberta continuing to set itself apart as a leader in economic growth and innovation?
Well, the thing that I'm most proud of this budget, and I will be the first to say, I wish the $5.2 billion wasn't in brackets. My previous budget was a lot more fun. I'd much rather be talking about balanced budgets. Hopefully we are next year. I'd say the thing I'm most proud of is this is a real budget. There's so much uncertainty. I think there's finance ministers in the past, and I said this in our first round of Q&A, that would rather have an easy time on budget day, and I'm not saying goose the numbers, but leave less upside for the province to have an easier ride on budget day. I do not. I would like budget day to be the hardest day, and I would like the province to have upside. So much like budget 2024, very small surplus, 336 million. Where did we end up? $5.8 billion surplus. And so that's what I'm most proud of. We didn't try to pretend that tariffs weren't real or unlikely. We brought them actually into the baseline. Not every province is going to do that. BC's budget came out since, and it does not. They're at over $10 billion deficit, and they've got an addendum saying, oh, and by the way, if tariffs come in at these levels, this is how much revenue will also decrease for the government of British Columbia. So the thing I'm proudest of is that it's real and that we continue to leave upside for the province, even with all of these challenges. And you meant there was something there about debt management. Can I talk about debt a little?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think the debt management and treasury management, I think, is the most fascinating part of this job. And I think I have maybe a different perspective on debt than maybe some of you. I come from a world where I very much appreciate debt. I think there's good debt and bad debt, and I think it's hard to grow without debt. What I think is important for the province going forward, and what I'm going to really try to get Albertans to think about, is our net financial position. And when we want to grow the Heritage Fund to $250 billion, Albertans better get behind that and start understanding it. So we may have to incur more debt, but as long as we're winning on the net financial position, I think that's a good thing for the province. This is something that's probably counterintuitive for many. Alberta's been punished because of our debt avoidance in the past and the ad hoc nature in which we borrow. So, historically, we go to the capital markets when we need to. Maybe we run a few surpluses and we don't go to the capital markets for multiple years. What that does is it creates a lot of challenge with liquidity for our bonds, and we're punished by the traders. So even though Ontario is the most indebted sub-sovereign in the world, historically Alberta pays more on their debt servicing than Ontario. In fact, just recently we traded through Ontario again because of some of the things we've done to smooth out our liquidity curve. So there's a real argument to be made, and I understand this is a comms challenge to explain this to Albertans, but with an economy of our size, you probably need about $100 billion in debt to achieve an optimum level of liquidity in your bond yield, bond curve. That's hard to explain, but I think when you think about that while we're saving in the Heritage Fund, and the Heritage Fund is outpacing our debt servicing costs, it makes a lot of sense. So if we can use the fiscal rules, control our operational spending, and keep an eye on these things on a net basis, I think Alberta wins both ways. Our debt becomes cheaper, and we're winning on the savings side. So I think we're trying to modernize our treasury management system, and we've done things this past year. We had a crazy debt maturation stack for 2025, over $13 billion. Never been heard of in Alberta before. Crazy. But we don't want to go to the market all at once and be at the whim of where interest rates are at that day. We want to try to smooth that curve out. So we've been pre-borrowing throughout 2024 in preparation for this maturation stack. So I think a lot of things we're doing on the treasury management side, but we want to ensure that we're getting the best value we can when we go to the markets to borrow money, and then also move forward on the Heritage Fund side. So I do think that's a win-win for the province. But I'm not saying we need more debt. I'm just saying that we need to go at it the smartest way possible.
That's great. I appreciate that you explained that. Are we always in debt a little bit?
Yes, currently we're going to end, well, we weren't once, but I guess you could argue that too. But yeah, at the end of this year, we'll be at about 82.1 billion in taxpayer-supported debt. There's another 15 or 16 billion that we borrow on behalf of others, mostly municipalities, airports, and the like. And that's identified separately in the budget as self-supported debt. But we're at 82.1 billion is the forecast for the end of this fiscal year, ending end of March.
Okay, that's great.
But maybe just another data point, when we're talking net position, we would have got down to about 7.3% net debt to GDP, and that will rise throughout the out years to 27, 28 to about 9.3, but still under 10%. And like I said earlier, you see other provinces like BC heading to 34%. So still very manageable. I think the 10% anchor is a good one, and there's nobody even close to us. We're managing that well.
We're doing the best. Okay. So per capita government spending in Alberta has risen nearly 75% over the past 20 years, far outpacing inflation, which increased by 49% in the same period. How does the government justify this level of spending growth, and what is the plan to ensure long-term fiscal sustainability?
If you look at the chart and you follow the trajectory of where a lot of that spending is, it's obviously healthcare. People are living longer. There's different diagnostic imaging and, more expensive processes that an average Albertan will use more of in their lifetime. So that aspect is simply getting more expensive. The other place I'd say is social services. If you look at the trend line, social services is actually growing at a faster rate than healthcare. So that's an uncomfortable conversation, I think, for many Albertans to have. So I think it's important to ensure that our social benefits are, fair, but I don't think we can be, market outliers. We still, anything when it comes to public services, healthcare especially, social services, unfortunately, the way they're dealt with in Canada and within our services is through wait lists. If you want to throttle something, you slow it down. And so that's the compromise there with, everyone wants faster surgeries, more prompt responses. But that's the challenge within our system. Some of that's, unavoidable from our perspective with, Canada Health Act and other things. But that's some of the reason why spending has increased. I'd say the one place that Alberta, in my estimation, is an outlier to other provinces is economic development, economic incentives. That might surprise some of you, but especially when you take into account the larger programming, APIP, ASIP, the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program, and the Carbon Capture Program. So, like the question was asked earlier, as we're forced to make tough decisions, I'd say that's one place we'll have to look.
You'll actually start cutting economic development programs?
Potentially, yeah. Everything will be on the table.
So, you said healthcare is our probably our biggest expense, if not one of them. But social services seems to be growing. It's the total is not the most expensive, but it is growing now. So things like the economy is tougher, population growth, things like that.
Yeah, you can see by the unemployment rate to employment growth delta, that's a place we're going to continue to see pressure.
Okay, so while Alberta is running a surplus, debt remains high. How will the government balance the surplus with the need for aggressive debt reduction without raising taxes or cutting services?
Well, there's a hell of a question. Yeah. No, some of these things are definitely in conflict with one another. I'd say it's important to think about, and I know this is tough because I think everybody thinks about it's a just a continuity of government, right? But it is very broken up within the fiscal years. So 24, 25, for example, we're going to end in surplus, even though oil's wherever it is today, 67, 40. We're still going to end in a strong surplus, and we'll have about $2 billion in surplus cash to allocate with the fiscal rules. And now we move forward and we deal with fiscal year 25, 26. But we rely on those fiscal rules to land us in the appropriate spot over the course of time. And I've said this in the past, really the fiscal rules, they give you time to not act too irrationally, and they tighten up that range of where spending is increased and then you're forced to cut. Those actions still happen, but I think the range is tighter. They don't let you overspend as much, and then you're not forced to cut as hard. So I think it's one way that it softens the revenue roller coaster.
Okay. Yeah.
But we have a $20 billion tax advantage over the next closest province. At the end of the day, it's revenue and expense. So, you know, I just made that worse by lowering income taxes. It's, yeah, as complicated as it is, it's also very simple. And those things are in conflict.
Right. And then we have to pay money to some of these other provinces as well, right? So that's the joy of being the leader, the fastest skater.
I don't pay it, but corporations and people do, and then we don't get as much back as everywhere else. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, so let's turn to healthcare funding. Alberta's healthcare model is increasingly unsustainable as the population ages. You've talked about that. Harvard researcher David Sinclair has estimated that if Americans stayed healthier for just one extra year, the US could save around $17 trillion in healthcare costs over time. Rather than continuing to pour money into a reactive sick care system, is the government exploring ways to incentivize preventative health measures that keep Albertans healthier longer and reduce long-term healthcare costs?
Yeah, well, I think this is important to the Premier. This is something she definitely believes in, and I know there's different initiatives within the health file, also with Minister Scow and Sports and Tourism, to ensure people are staying active, and we're thinking about the preventative side. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. All of that. I'd say from my perspective, I don't really have the luxury of delving into that as much in my file. I'm triaging the spend that we already are having a hard time controlling. But I do think it's the right way to think about it. But it's a challenge, especially when you're in a deficit cycle, for me to get too engrossed in.
Okay, fair enough. So I believe, Bruno, you had a question.
Yeah, I was talking to the minister earlier about the settlement with nurses and how all that kind of works and how much detail there is in regards to settlement. In other words, the whole 20-hour a week overtime. And you asked me to bring it up, so here we go. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I said don't be scared to. But I also said there's only so much I'll say. But I'd say, and I told you this, Bruno, the one thing that I think that the NDP brought in that was good was the Public Sector Bargaining and Coordination Office, centralizing that within government. And it's the reason that the NDP also gave zeros for those 4 years is because we were out of market. We were outside our provincial comparators in salaries in those fields. That's not the case now. So this will be the biggest increases in at least, I'd say, 15 years. But I sleep easy at night knowing that it's keeping us within market. Constantly, I know people think they need unions to protest me and get us to do things to make us move. That's not the case. A PBCO brings things to me constantly where they say, we're not at market in this specific job, and because of that, we can't recruit or retain anyone. Will you fix it? And I've never denied that. There's always instances where, say it's Crown prosecutors, maybe it's in a certain region, you can get really detailed about that. But the PBCO, allows us to look across all the sectors. We're currently at the tables with everybody. And I won't get into details, but it does help me sleep at night knowing what the province is offering and negotiating on will keep us at market. Post-COVID, a lot of the public sector deals skyrocketed. Cost of living, inflation, a period of not seeing any increases across Canada. So I'm confident that we'll land in a place that keeps us at market. We won't become an outlier again that ratchets up the costs of every other province. But when we talk about spending, majority of government spending is on people. If you include physicians, 31 billion in change is wages. And so some people hear that and they think bureaucrats, those damn bureaucrats. But that's very small part of the pie. It's nurses, it's teachers, it's frontline staff. So I think, in my estimation, as long as we're staying at market, even if we're high in market, I think that's a place Albertans can sleep with at night, and frankly, I think is somewhat unavoidable.
Well, that's great. So that wraps up our fireside chat, and want to thank you for that.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Now from Canada, Genics, our platinum sponsor. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. Genics is proud, very proud to be a sponsor of the Alberta Enterprise Group. We're proud to be an industry sponsor. We believe in the Alberta Enterprise Group and what they do and the value that it brings to us as industry. So my job today is to thank some people. So first of all, Chris, I would like to thank you. I have something for you. I happen to know what's in here, and I'm extremely jealous. That's all I'm going to say about that. But there you go, my friend. Thank you for being a moderator. Yes, give him a hand for sure. Minister, first of all, let me thank you. But secondly, let me just say this. I appreciate the budget you brought down. And I appreciate the fact that it was a budget that not everybody liked. I'm tired of budgets that seem to always have to appease the people. But you guys, I think, that's not a professional way to put it. The government, I think, this year did an excellent job in truly understanding what the economic times we live in Alberta and the economic value in which we live, and you're doing your best. One of the things I love is the fact that you're continually wanting to grow the Heritage Trust Fund, which I believe for Alberta is a major investment boon, not only for me, but for my children and for my grandchildren in the days to come. And I hope government will stick to that. On that note, Minister, thank you. I'd like to present you with this gift. I also know some of what's in here. And if you'd like to see me after, I'd be happy to share it with you. So thank you.
Cam, I ran out. I apologize. I'll make sure that I have some next time. Just want to thank our team again. Everybody worked so hard to pull today together, and there they are. My dad used to say, when you've got an old car, you need to blow the carbon out of it. Well, I did that this morning from Calgary. And so I was a little frazzled. Anyway, and Kelly, thank you for your understanding with my faux pas there. Everyone, thank you for today. I'm very grateful. Now we have a member spotlight, as we do with a lot of our members. Andersen in Canada is a sponsor today, and also Shondell Sabat, an enterprise advisor with Andersen, will be presenting on what he does for them right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining, and especially to Minister Horner. I think I'm going to echo some of the comments that were made earlier. I appreciate the honesty of the budget and the transparency, so job well done, at least in my opinion. And I know you don't hear that probably often enough, so thank you. My name is Shondell Sabat. Among the many hats you've seen me wear, here at Alberta Enterprise, I've recently joined Andersen. It's the old Andersen tax, and for those of you in my vintage, and of course being in the oil and gas industry, you'll remember Arthur Andersen as the firm that I guess caused the fall of Enron, to say it nicely. And a couple of the old partners, what they did was they purchased the name back in 2013 and have had a tremendous amount of success rebuilding the brand. And that brings me here today. So the firm itself was formed in 2013, and they've turned themselves into a leading international firm providing many different comprehensive services, including everything but audit, primarily corporate tax compliance, M&A advisory, valuation, litigation, consulting, and other specialized areas, including the one that I now work in, which is advisory services. And they do this, they have a team of about 19,000 professionals, and they're all over the world. I think I recently started a project, and I'm dealing with people in every continent, if I'm not mistaken. So specifically here at Andersen, Canada, we're a relatively small group, 50 professionals. We provide expert tax and valuation advice, as well as specializing primarily in US and Canadian tax compliance. That's a large part of what Andersen Tax does. Cross-border taxation, M&A advisory, and estate and tax planning. Our 50 professionals are scattered all across Canada, primarily Calgary and Vancouver, and secondarily here in Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. One of the things that I've really come to appreciate since starting there is the seamless access that we at Andersen have to a worldwide team. It is very easy to send an email or pick up the phone, and you can ask somebody in Slovenia, which I've done, or in Australia to help you solve a problem. So I think even though we're small here in Canada, we're mighty simply because we have 19,000 people that we can also lean on for advice and or to bring them into projects. So this global collaboration allows us to draw expertise from all over the world. Me specifically, US, Mexico, Latin America, Europe, Australia, and Asia, just to name a few places. So I'll talk specifically about what brought me to Andersen. I am not an accountant. That dream died after my first day in financial accounting at business school, and decided at that point in time that I had to find a different path. I'm a finance person and an entrepreneur primarily, and also spent some time as a CFO at a small family office. So the skill set that I bring to Andersen is more around the advisory, the strategy, and fractional CFO work. So what are some of the services that we're offering? Family enterprise advisory, which is just a natural extension for our clients. Could be anything from succession planning, governance, structuring, wealth preservation, and also just general advising for multi-generational businesses. Business exit strategies, which is something I've been involved in, sometimes good, sometimes bad, where we help the business owner maximize their value through financial planning, strategic buyer identification, and then utilizing tax-efficient deal structuring strategies. And then, of course, something that I've been doing for over 10 years, the fractional C-suite services. It's really on-demand CEO, CFO, temporary short-term type of C-suite services that a business might need during a transition. And then also one of the newer things I think that has really caught the world, sometimes mandated, sometimes reluctantly, but is the ESG advisory services. So that's really compliance, if it's legally mandated, sustainability reporting, and integrating ESG into corporate strategy. And what I'm trying to do in that area is make it a business case, right? We have so many costs in a business, but if you can, develop a system, develop a strategy, and make it integrate it with your business strategy and show how it can be accretive to earnings, that's really what I'm trying to do. And that's the project I'm working on with the team across the world. So the question is, you probably can't throw a stone in most city and not find someone who's in the advisory business. So why us? And I think it's the same reason why I decided to get involved with Andersen. It's the professionals that I've gotten to know, they at least in my opinion, they're the cream of the crop. Everyone I talk to, from Quito, Ecuador to the Netherlands to Slovenia, they're very knowledgeable, they're very, very collaborative, and they're always willing to help. So proven expertise across business lines. We also work to customize a solution. So of course, every business is unique, and our strategies align with the specific needs of the business. And then we also provide that end-to-end support. So we'll provide and guide businesses through growth, succession, and exit. And then lastly, I really can't say this enough, it's the global collaboration. It's amazing how much that matters. Even just the sustainability file that I'm on right now, the expertise that I'm able to talk to every day is second to none. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And you guys obviously know how to get a hold of me. Thank you.